Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today, we're going to tackle the great Vetiver Extraordinaire from Frederic Malle. Again, a big shout out and a big thank you to my good friend Arnold for supplying me with these very generous samples. More than enough to wear multiple times. I am wearing it as my scent of the day for the very first time today. And it's Valentine's Day. Go figure. My scent of the day on Valentine's Day is the cold Vetiver Extraordinaire. But before we hop into the review, and really it's more of an early impression than a review, because even though I feel like I've gotten a pretty good handle of the scent, giving it a full wear today, it's still just an early impression. I haven't gone through a full bottle or anything like that, so take this with a grain of salt. But first, we're going to do a quick unboxing. Now, this unboxing was really inspired heavily by my good friend Justin. His new alias now is Roger Graves. You'll see him in streams. At least I hope this is what this is. I guess I should have checked before I started opening my mouth. It must be what it is. Yeah, it is. It is. So this, actually, he's been talking about it for a long time and saying, Ramsey, you have to try this. It's so good. It's, you know, I think it's discontinued, but you can still get it very easily. You know, there are... I got 45 mils for $12, okay? So it's super cheap, and it has a note, literally in the name, that is my favorite note, leather. And sorry, I'm just picking up these packing peanuts that I dropped everywhere. Okay, so let me put these away over here. Okay, so let me, there she is. There's 3 of these. You can see there's 3 15 mils. Let me get this open. Let me get this open. Actually, there's 4 15 mils. Excuse me, I thought there was 3. There's 4. They must have been like, here, no one else is buying it. Just take one. Just have an extra one, please. We don't want it. Which is funny, because he said this is a really good scent. So I'll take what I can get. So this is a fragrance from the house of... the House of Dana. And so this is from the House of Dana. Dana Perfumes, if you will. And this is called English Leather Black. English Leather Black. So this is a flanker of the very famous English leather. And so I've got now, these are each 15 mils. So I've got, you know, 4 of them now. And I was expecting 3, so, but I'll take 4. And distributed by Dana Classic Fragrances, Inc., Deerfield Beach, Florida. Made in China. That is kind of worrying. That is not what I was expecting. But I guess for 12 bucks, what do you expect, right? But English Leather Black. So let me pull it up. Let's take a look and see what the databases say. English Leather Black. 2007 it came out. And it's a woody fresh fragrance that lists bergamot, coriander, musk, and sandalwood. So let's see what it's like. I'm excited. I'm excited to have it, especially for 12 bucks. I mean, you can't go wrong. 12 bucks. I mean, what's the worst that could happen, right? So the worst thing now is I've got to find a place for them to live. Where do you want to live, English Leather Black? I'll put you right here for now, since I don't know where you're going to live. So we will come back to that question of where they're going to live amongst their brethren. Okay, so let's get into the review itself. So the review today is going to be on the ever-popular Vetiver Extraordinaire. And the reason I'm doing it out of this decant is obviously I do not have a bottle. And, you know, Vetiver is a note that can be challenging to some. It was very challenging to me originally, and we'll talk a little bit about that later in the review. It was actually a note I thought I did not like the very first time. But as we tackle Vetiver Extraordinaire, I want to give you a little bit of background first on Vetiver Extraordinaire and the whole idea behind the concept, because this came out in 2002, and obviously there's been Vetiver fragrances that were done for, you know, 100 years before this, you know, maybe even if you go back, just I'm talking Western perfumery, if you go back to the Indian side of things, the Arabic perfumes, they've probably been making stuff like this, like Rojas, for thousands and thousands of years. Who knows how old Rojas goes back to. But Vetiver, I've got an entire fragrance video dedicated to it. And this is not a top 10 Vetiver. And one of these days, I will rank that list, and I'll put my favorite Vetivers in a ranked order. Right now, I'm not ready to do that because I'm still exploring more and more Vetivers. And this is one such exploration. This is one of the big ones, really, that people always put on the list. The other one is Chanel's Sycamore Eau de Toilette, which I do not have a bottle of, but I really want a bottle of. So this came out in 2002. It was created by Dominique Ropion and, of course, Frederic Malle. And it's kind of this green, woody scent, which is exactly what you would expect. But let me kind of take you to the journey and the whole point of the project. So the whole point whenever they decided to make Vetiver Extraordinaire, and remember, the House of Frederic Malle launched in 2000. So this was only a couple years after the initial launch of Frederic Malle, which came with stuff like Mousse Gravageur and Le Parfum de Thérèse and Noir Peace, stuff like that. And so this is only a couple years later. So Dominique Ropion and Frederic Malle kind of put their heads together, and the goal was to take a note that is traditionally used in masculine toilettes and to modernize it, okay? So what they did is they use this vetiver, and this is a special type of vetiver. And it's not the first time I think that a perfumer's done this, but I think it's maybe one of the best examples. And what they did is they used what they call molecular distillation. So they used molecular distillation, and they basically used molecular distillation, which is a process that allowed Ropion and Malle to remove the parts of the vetiver that they deemed too old-fashioned for this project, because this is a Frederic Malle after all, right? In 2002, this is supposed to be a modern fragrance. How do you take a traditional note like vetiver, which is used all the way back, you know, probably the most famous vetiver of all time is Guerlain's Vetiver, one of the most beautiful bottles too. You know, I was looking at this bottle today. This top line right here is almost curved. You can kind of see it. It's like a curve. It's a beautiful bottle. There's a story behind this bottle. One day I'll tell that story on the channel, but each one of these little lines right here, each one of these sections is supposed to represent a time in a man's life. And it's a beautiful story and a beautiful bottle. But this was all the way back to Jean-Paul Guerlain's first creation in 1959, I believe, if memory serves. So you have Guerlain on the cap on this side, and you have Vetiver on this side. You know, so we're talking 1959. And this is 2002 we're talking about. So the process of molecular distillation basically allowed them to try to take some of those old-fashioned parts of vetiver out and keep the parts that they wanted. That was the whole idea. So without molecular distillation, they would have had to actually limit the amount of vetiver used. This is the way that Frederic Malle and Dominique Ropion tell the story, because without molecular distillation, you know, if they used this large of an amount of vetiver in a fragrance, they would have got pieces of the vetiver that would have felt clunky, would have felt out of place, would have felt maybe overwhelming to the senses. Maybe some of the notes that they did not want to come forward would have come forward. Think of things like the camphoraceous side of vetiver, or something like that. This is just my brain running through scenarios of what would happen if you just took 20% vetiver and dosed it in a perfume, and what would come forward, right? Because I think it was Luca Turin, or in one of the books that he wrote, maybe it was Sanchez, I don't remember. But one of them made the point that vetiver does not bend very well. It's a hard note to kind of get to work with everything else. If you put too much, it kind of takes over very quickly. So the molecular distillation helped Dominique Ropion use such a large dose of vetiver in the fragrance and yet still keep that balance. And everyone thinks of Dominique Ropion as a master, right? This fragrance to me is all about balance. It's all about nimble. It's all about being nimble and being balanced, because everything is in its place in this fragrance, and that's a very important piece to the puzzle here. So it allowed them to remove some of those undesirable aspects that begin to emerge whenever you dose vetiver in higher quantities. So with Vetiver Extraordinaire, they were able to have this vetiver note dosed at 20%. And when Dominique Ropion tells the story, he says it's the largest amount in a modern perfume. Now, this is from a couple years ago, listening to him talk, so maybe since then there's been some brands that have now come in and done vetiver, you know, and vetiver note at a larger amount in a modern designer commercial release. We're saying, you know, obviously not something like this, but a designer release, let's say, or a niche release. And so right out of the gate, not to mince words, the vetiver in here is brilliant, and it's a note that I've really come to respect. I think when you're early on in your journey, it's an easy note when you first smell it to go, nope, it's not for me, absolutely not for me. Vetiver works in a very serious, you know, it's almost like a very serious note. I could see a vetiver fragrance working very well on a high-ranking officer in a company, and no nonsense, you know, somebody who is kind of standoffish to the people that work with him, right? The boss, that kind of thing. That's how I perceive vetiver perfumes. You know, somebody who seems a little bit cold to the underlings who work underneath him. Someone who seems very hard to approach, but he wants it that way. He doesn't want to go out and have drinks with the guys that he works with, right? He wants there to be a strict demarcation of roles. That's the way that vetiver kind of comes across to me. And slowly over time, even though vetiver can have this coldness to it, I began to warm up to it. And it's taken years. It's not a process that just happened instantly. And I'll talk about some of the other vetivers and where this sits to me. But all I can say is the vetiver in this is brilliant. There is no doubt about it. It is rooty. It's earthy. It has earthy elements like Encre Noire, and yet it has clean and crispy elements like Guerlain Vetiver, like I mentioned earlier. So if you take kind of the earthy and rooty aspects of Encre Noire, there's also a lot of cashmeran in Encre Noire, which comes across as smelling very woody and musky. You know, she really amped up kind of the musky aspects of Encre Noire. And balance. Remember, Vetiver Extraordinaire is all about balance. Imagine, you know, imagine the Karate Kid balancing on one foot, right? And that's kind of the image. I just imagine Dominique Ropion as this master just balancing this extremely tough formula. And it doesn't, when you smell it, there's a lot going on, but you can't help but notice the star of the show, the vetiver, hands down, right? And again, it's a very serious note. Now, if I were to kind of point out some of the other aspects in Vetiver Extraordinaire, I would say that the vetiver sometimes comes across as smelling very rooty and dusty. And, you know, the qualities that you're used to smelling in a vetiver are there, okay? It's rooty, it's dusty, sometimes it's even wet. And so, again, it's balance, right? It's Dominique Ropion as the Karate Kid. So you're going to get some of that dusty, earthy, almost like pulling a vegetable out of the ground, right? And there's deep roots, you know. Think of a vegetable that has deep roots, potatoes, carrots, or parsnips, or I don't know, something where you pull it out, beets, and they've got these roots digging into the ground, right? And you pull it out, and some of the earth kind of comes with it, right? And you get some of that dry earthiness. But you also get this wet aspect. And normally what I've found is that vetivers will do one of two things. They will go down that dusty, dry, smoky, you know, area. Or they'll go down the crisper, grassier, cleaner, wetter aspects. And this is balanced, remember, straight down the middle. And so you kind of can get, it's like you're walking down the middle of the path, and you can reach out and you can touch this side, and you can touch this side, right? And, you know, you can give high fives to people on both sides if you want, because you're right in the middle, you're balanced. Dominique Ropillon's taking you right down the center of the path with this vetiver. And some of the notes that I made. So the extra bits that I get from this vetiver that I normally don't get from some of the other vetivers are the spices and the floral aspect. So there's this spiciness that tends to come through, and there's this peppery, they say pink pepper in Parfumo. I don't know if that's actually the note listing. Let me actually pull up what Frederic Malle's website says, just out of curiosity. Vetiver, I guess I should have done this beforehand. Ordinaire. Sorry. I didn't mean to sniffle in your ear there. Frederic Malle, Vetiver Extraordinaire. Let's see what they say about the notes. Description. The essence of an extraordinarily charming man. Interesting they say man, because I thought this was completely unisex. I mean, I think vetiver is a traditionally masculine, like I said in the beginning, toilette product. And, but the aspects of this vetiver, maybe because of that molecular distillation, I feel like it allows it to be worn by anybody. Anyone can wear this to me. It says, the essence of an extraordinarily charming man, one who is magnetic without even seeming to try. Every gesture infused with a sense of humor and sophistication. Not a rugged, shouting masculinity, but an irresistible whisper. A charismatic field of woods, an unprecedented dose of Haitian vetiver, woven with sandalwood, cedar, and cashmeran, bound to the skin by oak moss and musk, and lifted by pink pepper, bergamot, and bitter orange, and a whiff of captivating freshness. Now, that bitter orange to me, some people say, oh, the bitter orange makes it seem like Terre d'Hermès. Absolutely not. Not at all. Not one bit to me. At least not to my nose. I get much more of the peppery bits in the opening, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. But if I were to rank the vetiver Extraordinaire on this vetiver spectrum, so imagine you have the green, you know, grassy, fresh vetivers like Guerlain's Vetiver. And imagine over here you've got the dark, brooding vetivers like Encre Noire, right? So on the left side you have your Guerlain Vetivers. On the right side you've got your Encre Noirs. Vetiver Extraordinaire is going to fit right down the middle. It's going to fit right down the middle, right down the center. It does such a fantastic job of kind of sort of highlighting the citrusy, fruity, more floral aspect on one hand, which I associate more with the cleaner vetivers. Another clean vetiver that I could mention would be something like this. Creed's original vetiver. These two, for me, are the poster child of clean vetiver, right? And on the other hand, it does such a fantastic job of highlighting kind of the darker, earthier, smokier elements that you get in something like Encre Noire, or even something like Nishane's Sultan Vetiver. If you smelled these two are kind of the poster child for the dirtier, earthier, more challenging vetivers to wear. Two of my favorite vetivers, by the way. And so for me, I kind of get both. Again, I get this volcanic soil and this wet, soapy aspect of vetiver. And it sits dead in the middle of the two extremes. It's the best way to describe vetiver extraordinaire. What makes it extraordinary is that I can't just put it in the category of the fresher vetivers or the category of the darker ones. It's balanced. It's right down the middle. And, you know, when I first started to learn about vetiver, again, just going back to kind of my journey, I didn't like it. I thought, what's the big deal? It's just grass, you know. Why is vetiver such a note that is, you know, they make these fragrances about them with the name vetiver in it. Why? I didn't understand. And, you know, I think I preferred my vetiver more as a supporting note back then. So if, you you know, if I was going to have vetiver in a fragrance, I didn't realize back then how much vetiver actually was in a perfume. Because I think vetiver is the most common note, or vetiveryl acetate or something like that is the most commonly used note in the perfumer's toolkit. They use vetiveryl acetate, I think, more than any other note. And so I kind of preferred it as a supporting note. I didn't want the vetiver to have this, you know, because sometimes when vetiver gets amplified, it gives off this almost vegetal. Some people say it smells like celery. Some people say it smells like vegetable stew. I've heard onion soup. I've heard all that good stuff, right? And so luckily for me, I don't get that. I don't get that swampy aspect of vetiver that, you know, people bring up over and over again of why they don't necessarily like it. And I also don't get the more challenging aspects of vetiver. For example, sometimes it can be camphoraceous and oily and all that stuff. I don't get that here. And yet, I think you still get this vetiver that, interestingly enough, as I was thinking about this idea of balance, you know, right dead down the middle, right? I was thinking that Vetiver Extraordinaire would be such a great fragrance for a beginner who's kind of studying vetiver for the very first time, because the reason it would be such a great fragrance for a beginner is it can show exactly what vetiver can do in a composition. It kind of gives them a full picture without overloading them too much on the green, grassy, fresh side, or without overloading them too much on the smoky, dark, animalic, more challenging sides of vetiver. It's kind of giving them a sneak peek of what a vetiver-dominant perfume can do, and just kind of slowly easing them into it. You know what I mean? That's why I think it would be a fantastic beginner, vetiver beginner, a beginner, someone who's not used to wearing these type of fragrances that are vetiver heavy. And the spicy peppery aspect in the opening, you know, so whenever you first spray, one of the things that's going to catch your attention about Vetiver Extraordinaire that you won't notice in some of the stuff like Guerlain Vetiver and, you know, I mentioned Encre Noire, I mentioned the Creed. The Creed will have a little bit, I think, of pepperiness. But the pepper here is probably the most dominant peppery, heavy opening. And yesterday I reviewed a fragrance called Comme des Garçons Black from 2013, from a decade ago. I can't believe 2013 was a decade ago. And so I reviewed Comme des Garçons Black. And that had a beautiful peppery incense opening, and I called that opening energetic. I said that pepper adds this sort of energetic vibe about it. Like, it just makes you want to get stuff done. You know what I mean? You want to put it on, you want to go do stuff. You want to go knock out your checklist. You don't want to sit around and get nothing accomplished. It makes you feel lively, right? It makes the fragrance feel lively too. The pepper does the exact same thing here. And that's part of the reason I think with that balance comes versatility. Many times people think about fragrances like Guerlain's Vetiver as a warm weather vetiver, and I do. This is what I want to wear. If I'm going to reach for a vetiver fragrance in the warm weather, it's going to be this, or it's going to be this. That's it. These are the two. This is a 2016 batch. This is the very last Creed year that I will buy. So this is the freshest Creed bottle that I can own, because I won't buy 2017 bottles. Once they change to the 150, between the 50 and the 100 ml versus this is a 75 ml bottle versus the 75 and 120s, I won't buy any more Creeds. That's it. I'm done. So this is it. This is the freshest bottle of Creed I will own. It is a 2016 bottle. And so these are the ones I reach for in the heat because they highlight more of those citrusy elements. This is a very strange vetiver because Creed claims to use all parts of the vetiver plant, which is one of the most outrageous claims I've ever heard, because the roots are the only thing that give off the essential oil. The grass itself gives off nothing. So them saying they use the top part of the grass of the vetiver is one of the most insane claims I've ever heard. That sounds like you're talking to somebody who doesn't know what, you know, like you're trying to brag about something to someone who is just kind of nodding along. Oh, wow. Yeah, Creed's the only house that uses the grass part of the vetiver too. Wow, that's really special. But they have no clue what the hell they're talking about, you know. But I do like that fragrance. And then there's some which I would call tweener fragrance, you know, in between, right? In between the warm weather fragrances and the colder. This or even Encre Noire à l'extrême can be one of the colder weather options. And the ones that also fall in the middle would be something like Roja's Vetiver is a good middle vetiver for, let's say, fall or spring. You know, this is a good vetiver. It kind of falls in the middle because it has aspects that would work both, you know, both in the fall and the spring and the warmer weather and the cooler weather, but not ultra hot or not ultra cold. And instantly, though, when I smelled Vetiver Extreme, something popped in my head. I had this flash of a fragrance that I just got about a month or two ago. And it's not Guerlain's Vetiver. It's Guerlain's Vetiver Extreme. Have you guys heard of this one? So I paid $50 for this 100 ml. Okay? 100 mils of Vetiver Extraordinaire, new on the Frederic Malle website, is $375. So $325 more than what I paid for this. Now I got this from somebody. There's no cap, as you can see. I don't know if it's a tester. It might be a tester. I don't care, though. Yeah, it is. It's a tester. So what? Sometimes you got to sacrifice a cap, you know? And this fragrance, Vetiver Extreme, for me, came out in 2007. And it's Guerlain's take. Now that I've smelled Vetiver Extraordinaire, it is 100%, to me, Guerlain trying to do something a little different with their vetiver, but also trying to maybe catch up to what Guerlain's Frederic Malle's vetiver was doing, because they've added some spicier bits. So Vetiver Extreme, they've added some nutmeg and pepper, and I told you pepper's a big part of Vetiver Extraordinaire, and they've removed the tobacco. So one of the things that makes this scent what it is the tobacco. This is actually one of the best tobacco fragrances ever created, but no one thinks of it as a tobacco fragrance. They think of it as a vetiver fragrance. And so removing the tobacco and making the spiciness, and there's no listing of cashmeran, but there is a listing of cedar. There's cedar and tonka in Vetiver Extreme. And these two, I think, Vetiver Extreme and Vetiver Extraordinaire, are the closest two fragrances on the market together. So, I've said all this amazing stuff about Vetiver Extreme. Would I buy it? Would I actually spend the money on buying a bottle, is the thing. If I could get the right deal on a vintage, maybe. Maybe. Do I need it, though? I haven't showed you any of the Javois. I have Private Label, I have Incident Diplomatique. There are other vetiver dominant scents that we could talk about that maybe have vetiver more as a supporting cast, like Diamant by Amouage or something like that, you know, that I'm not even mentioning. So do I need a bottle of Vetiver Extraordinaire? No, I don't think I do. I think I'm pretty much covered. If I didn't have Vetiver Extreme, I would say, okay, maybe there's a spot if you really want to be a true vetiver collector. But just the ones I've shown you so far in the video, Roja Vetiver, Encre Noire, Guerlain Vetiver, Creed Original Vetiver, and Vetiver Extreme by Guerlain, they, I think, do pretty much what, you know, they give you the vetiver experience. I don't think I really need Vetiver Extraordinaire, but I am over the moon. I've got a chance to test it. It's a beautiful vetiver, honestly, and it's a note that if you are a beginner, give this one a try. And also, don't make the mistake that I did, where you say, oh, I don't want any vetiver fragrances, and I would avoid them like the plague. Like if I saw, you know, something like this, or, oh, Nishane Sultan Vetiver is another one, I would just completely avoid it. Nope, I don't want a vetiver fragrance. Absolutely not. No, that's not for me. And I understand that, because everything kind of comes in its time. But you should be continually smelling stuff that you don't like as well, not just stuff you like. You should be smelling stuff you don't like, because you might be shocked how something like Vetiver Extraordinaire would grow on you. And if you really want to understand the art of perfumery, you can't ignore one note. You can't just take Vetiver and go, I don't like Vetiver. Or, you know, I don't like amber. I don't like musk. I don't like oud. I don't like... You have to kind of give yourself the entire picture. And you can always lean towards your favorite notes. But that's my opinion. I think that you should try everything that you can get your nose on. And some notes originally, when you're new to the fragrance world, will challenge you. And I think Vetiver is one of those notes when it's really dosed at a portion in the fragrance where it gets to the point where they're going to call it Sultan Vetiver, Guerlain Vetiver, Creed Original Vetiver, Roja's Vetiver, you know, on and on and on. The Vetiver is in the name. Once it gets to that point, you know, give those a try. Don't just completely shy away from them, because you will find over time you'll begin to understand more. You'll understand what the big deal about some grass that grows in India is, you know. You'll start to pick up differences between, you know, Haitian Vetiver and different types of Vetiver, Javanese Vetiver, and all of this stuff. You'll start to pick up the differences, because there are differences. And it's really a beautiful ingredient, and it's in some reason, probably because of the way the fragrances were made back in the day, and this probably has a big part to do with it. Guerlain's Vetiver, I think, is one of the most influential masculines ever, of all time. And even I am still coming around to understanding this. Even now, I love this, by the way. This has really grown on me. And so, you know, even now, smelling something like this, I get new bits and pieces of it. I understand it more. But I think of Vetiver as this masculine scent. It has this air of masculinity, kind of like what Frederic Malle's website was saying. But there are some Vetivers that I really feel like can be worn by anybody. And some of them are easier to pull off than others. I think the tobacco in Guerlain's Vetiver makes it maybe a little bit more just traditionally masculine than normal. Creed's Original Vetiver is a great one for anyone to wear. This is very easy for, you know, anyone to wear. And I'm going to add the Vetiver Extraordinaire to the list. This is one you should definitely try. I think it's completely unisex, irregardless of what Frederic Malle's website says and how it's targeted. It's actually considered to be a masculine fragrance. They call Vetiver Extraordinaire one of Frederic Malle's masculines. Most malls are completely unisex, listed whenever you see them. They're unisex. You know, pull up any of them. Even some of the ones you would think are for women, they list as unisex, Carnal Flower and, you know, stuff like that. But some of them are really geared towards the masculine side, or they say they're geared towards the masculine side. And some of them are geared towards the feminine side. Like Dante Bra, they call a feminine fragrance. I don't think Dante Bra is a feminine fragrance at all. I think it's completely unisex. And, you know, something like Vetiver Extraordinaire, I would say, if you're a woman and you're interested in exploring the note of Vetiver, this is a great one to kind of put on the radar. So, if you guys have smelled Vetiver Extraordinaire, do let me know. To my good friend Arnold for supplying me with this beautiful decant. Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed wearing it today, even though I am wearing a cold, aloof note on Valentine's Day. I've really, really enjoyed getting to know a perfume I otherwise would have been, you know, would have been kind of blind to. I've never smelled this before. And I think he told me that this is the vintage matte cap version. So the other thing is that I was going to say, I don't know what the new formulation is like. I don't know if it's been through a reformulation. Usually Vetiver fragrances can be kept in good condition because it's not a note that's gone through issues, you know. But sometimes they'll have oak moss and stuff like that that may have to be played with. So do give the new one a try, but I've never smelled the new one if this truly is a vintage. So let me know your thoughts below. Hope everyone has a great Valentine's Day. Thanks for watching. If I can get in a live stream later, I will. Otherwise, I'll hopefully catch you guys tomorrow. Cheers. Bye now.